comfortable until the mic comes.
Okay, so we're basically just taking out your challah dough and just squishing all the air out. That way it'll be more workable for you. It's over. Okay, have them pass around the bag. So, did not bring any plastic knives, that's my bad. But we can always just, the best way to pull challah dough is not like this, like that. The best way is to really clasp it like this and give it a nice twist. And nice and gentle, so that your gluten strands inside the dough don't rip completely. You're just giving it a nice twist. Just twist it where you want it to break off, and just give it a nice pinch to pinch it off. So I'm going to show you the 6 braid. If you want, you don't have to do 6, but I'm going to show you. You could do a small 6 braid so you have some dough left over, or you could do a 4 braid also. Yeah. We're gonna you can get 2 small challahs out of your dough, or you can get 1 really big one. That's up to you. And then we're gonna incorporate, the pink strand, which is your pink challah dough over here. This is gonna be one of your strands. So you could cut it in half and use it for 1 challah, or you could use it for your big one. This is your pink challah.
If they're making 2, they still want 6 balls?
If you're making 2, you could probably do 4 balls then.
Like 4 each. So
4
total,
each.
I think.
Yeah.
If you're making 2 challah, you probably want to divide your dough into a total of 8 balls. You'll do 2 more strands.
Yeah.
If you're doing 1 large one, then 6.
Yeah, let's see how this works, okay?
Sure, no problem. So far, so good. So while you guys are ripping apart your challah, I'm going to show you a really cute roll you can make. So at home, when you have some extra dough, take about a 3-ounce strand, and the best way to make an even challah is to weigh your challah. If you want to make a 1-pound challah, scale your challah to 1 pound and then chop it up. If you want to make a 2-pound challah, scale your dough out to 2 pounds and then chop it up into how many balls you want it to be.
Take that for a second. Thank you.
You always want your strands to stay a little bit thick. You don't want them long and skinny, otherwise you're going to have a very flat challah. So you want your strands to be nice and a little bit fatter, not long and skinny. Hello? Testing.
Yeah, just maybe spin it on your blouse. Yeah, a little tight and tether here. Let's try that.
Cool. Hello? Can you hear me now? All right. While you guys are rolling we're going to be rolling our circles. So we just want to get it a little bit fat, not too long and skinny. And the best way is to start in the center, and work your way out. And don't be afraid to push it a little bit. But this would be a good strand, just like that. I'm going to show you a cool trick when you guys are at home with your challah dough. It's a cute little roll. If you cut your challah just like that, give it some teeth, always try this at home when you guys have some extra dough. Or if you want to just make rolls tonight, this is what you can make with it. I cut here along the side, not all the way. This side is still intact. And I'm gonna roll this up just like this, like a little cinnamon bun. And then when it comes out, it looks like a little bear claw. And when you bake it, when it rises, paint it with egg, and then you put it in your baking pan, and it looks like a crown, like a roll, like a crown. It bakes really pretty, like that. Okay, I'm going to show you the 4 braid. We'll start with the little ones. And the pink dough is going to be incorporated into your challah. So you'll have a pink strand in your challah. Remember to keep them nice and fat and a little bit long. You don't want them to be too skinny, otherwise you're going to get a flat challah. Tablecloth is a little bit in the way. Alright, what you want to do is once you get your 4 strands, you want to pinch the top. Everybody see that? We're going to pinch our top. Everyone still rolling? Yes, still rolling. Okay. I'll keep doing it. I'll do it over again. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to crisscross the top, just like that. Take the 2 ends, and we're going to crisscross the top. And we're going to find our center, and we're going to take this guy and bring him down. I'm going to do it again. We have our 4 strands. We're going to take our 2 ends. No? Go back on top. Take our 2 strands, and we're going to crisscross. Crisscross. Okay? You want to make sure that you're going all the way on the top and not just like that. You want it all the way on the top, crisscross. And we're going to bring the right side down into the center. And then we're going to start on the left side. So your left side goes to the right side, and this guy on top comes down into your center. And you should have another strand on the right and one on the top. So you'll bring your right strand over to the left, and then the guy on top comes down to the bottom. And you should have 3 on the bottom and 1 on the top. Your left strand now is going to go back to the right. And then the guy on top is going to come down. And you should have 3 strands on the bottom. And now again, your right guy comes to the left. And what comes next? The middle guy goes to the middle. And then your left goes to your right, and the top goes to your middle. And then your right goes to your left, and the top goes down. At the bottom, you just kind of squish it all together, whatever's left over, and just tuck it underneath. Tuck it under your challah, just like that. Yes, I will do it again. And it's the same thing with the 6th braid too. Okay, and I brought some example of pans you can make your challah on a flat pan, okay? And also, if you want the sides to be nice and large like it is at the bakery, you could stick it in a small foil pan just like this. And the smaller challahs, you could get one of these guys to put it in also, and it gets like a nice thick side. That's just a little trick to make it a little fatter. All right, here we go again. Does anybody have a 6? Yeah, all right, here we go. Same idea, okay? We crisscross the top. We bring the left guy to the right. We bring the guy on top down. And then we go right to left. Bring the guy that's up top down. And then we go left to right. Yeah, it's the same thing with the 6 too. This is the easiest way. I know it sounds complicated, but this is the fastest way to make a 4 and a 6. And a 3 is a regular braid. Everyone's familiar with that. The tablecloth keeps moving.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that I need for more dough. Yeah. Yeah. You want to keep it nice and fat. Okay, I know you want to stretch it and make it a really long challah, but it really affects the dough for it to rise. And if you want a chubbier challah, a nice fluffy center, don't make it too skinny. Just going to show you a really fun trick to just do one. When you have that little dough left and you don't know what to do with it, this guy you can make a little bit longer. You just fold the guy in half, just like this. Fold it over your finger, and you're just going to give it a little twist. Again. Fold it over your finger, and then give it a twist.
Lower.
Lower. And then you would put it in a little pan. You could put it in a little pan like this. You could roll it and put it in a muffin pan, or you could just bake it like this. Just make sure to twist your, pinch your bottom. Just like that. When you have that little bit of dough and you don't know what to do with it. All right, 6 braids. Pinch on the top. Question. You could put it in the center. Do I have another pink? Can you give me another pink? Cool. Pink one. Oh, okay. That's fine. I don't need any more videos. You just take pictures. Okay, 3 and 6. All right, same thing. Pinch the top. Nice and tight. And you want to, when you crisscross, you want to go all the way up top, right here. You don't want to go over here because you lost all this. You got to go right up on top. So right and left, get crisscrossed. Make space and find your center. So it should be 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. Bring your right braid down into the center. And make sure one is always on top. So you should have 2 to the right, 2 to the left, and 1 in the center.
go. See that?
Go. Oh, Larry.
Yeah, when you're done taking pictures. You were blocking that so people couldn't see.
Okay, ready? Chris, cross, one in the center. Make sure you have 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Okay, it's the same thing with the 4 strand. Just have to find your center. Okay, 1 guy on the top. So, we'll tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a neighbor who went across the street. The left side neighbor went to the right side of the street. And then his friend came down to his apartment. And then the friend on the right side of the street went to his friend on the left side of the street. And then the friend came down to his apartment. Are you getting it? You getting it? Yeah. All right, here we go. Left side strand. There's a guy up on top. He's waiting to come into the apartment. But first the left side has to go over across the street to the right. Okay? These 2 braids here on the bottom need to move over a little bit so the guy on top can come down to the center. Now you have 2 on the right, you have 2 on the left. Yes? And you have 1 guy in the center. And you have 1 guy hanging up here. So when does he come down? He comes down when the right side goes to the left side. And then he comes down. You should have 2 on the right, 1 in the center, 2 on the left. Yes? And then the left side goes to the right side. And the one on top comes where? In the center. The right side goes across. And the guy on top comes where? In the center. Got it? Got it yet? Left side, middle. I'll come help you. I'll come help you. I'll do the 4 again. You always want to tuck your ends in. You have these little points. You want to take your points and just give it a nice tuck. So you have a nice clean challah, not a pointy edges that'll get burned. And you just kind of give it a little rock. Okay. This is where your big one's going to come in. Okay, 4. I could show you a few others, but I think they're much more complicated than this one. This is the easiest one. Squeeze your 4 on the top. Okay, spread out the braids. Okay. Now I'm gonna stand this way. I think you see it all backwards. Nope, I'm not gonna stand that way. I'm gonna braid for you this way then. Crisscross applesauce. No, is it backwards? Okay. Go back. All right. Crisscross. Take your 2 ends. Criss cross. Good. Now bring the one that bring the one on the left down to the center. Yes. The right is going under and the left is going over. And you're going to take this one and bring it down to the center. See how it's split? Does it look like this? Yeah? Looks like chicken legs? Okay. Now you have a right side and you have a left side. You're going to take your left side. See where this guy is up here? This is where you're going to start because he's on top. So you're going to take your right, and right here, that's where you're going to lay your dough. You're going to bring it over to the left, just like that. Okay? And see how there's a space right here in the center? You're going to bring this piece into the center. Good? Good? Alright, now the same thing on the right side. This guy's up on top. This is your right side. You're going to swing it over to the left. You want to make sure you start here. You don't want to go like this because it's going to be really loose. You want to really pop it up and put it right over to the left. Yeah. Then you have your two sides right here. You have your two, and you just find your center. The one on the top is going to come down. There you go. And now we're going to start over. We're going to start left to right. The strand that's on the bottom of the guy on top is going to go to the right. Go to the right. And then what comes next? Yeah, bring it down. And then the guy on the right is going to swing across. Make sure it's really tight. Find your center between these two. Keep this guy on top. And then bring this guy down. I can come help you. I'll come help you. Did everybody get the braiding? I'm going to come around and help you. And then the end, you just pinch your ends together and give it a little tuck. Pinch your ends together and give it a little tuck.
Okay, just leave it behind. It's always behind.
Does this dough that we're working it with already have egg in it?
It does not have egg.
You know what? I want to walk. Okay, everyone. If I could have your attention. I know that some of you are still working on your braiding, and that's fine. But in the interest of time, we're going to transition to the next part of the program. So if you're still working on your challah, please feel free. If you're interested, pink sprinkles are being floated around if you would like that on your challah. Before I start, I have a little bit of housekeeping. I don't. Well,
Okay. Go for it. Here.
okay. Before I start, I have a tiny bit of housekeeping. I just want to remind you, is it on? I just want to remind you that if you didn't sign in when you came, please see me before you leave. I'd love to get your information. And also, as you noticed, JUF has been around taking pictures. If you don't want your image on our website or used for anything, please make sure you let me know that. And then finally, if any of you are getting thirsty after the hard work of making challah, there's water there I want you to take. Okay. Can you hear me without the mic? Okay. My name, as Jen said, is Melissa Rosen. I am the Director of National Outreach at Sharsheret. I really want to thank you all for coming tonight. And special thanks to Jen and Audrey and Sarah and everyone who helped pull this evening off. They really worked hard, and it's clear we have a successful program, so I'm grateful. And of course, as Jen said, JUF Young Women's Committee, JUF, and Mayan's Bakery. And I want to thank each of you for coming here tonight to discuss this important topic. I'm very aware that this is not an easy topic, and by coming tonight and educating yourself, you really all should be commended. So tonight, there are a few things I'd like to do. I want to introduce you to Sharsheret, discuss why breast cancer is a Jewish issue, help you figure out how to determine personal risk and how to manage it and how to mitigate it, talk a little bit about signs and symptoms, and then if there's a little bit of time and you're interested, we could even talk about how to help a friend who's facing diagnosis. So before this event, how many of you have heard of Sharsheret before? Raise your hand. That's actually a pretty good number, but I'm glad we're here to raise awareness with the rest of you. Sharsheret is the only organization that offers culturally meaningful support and education to the Jewish community, to Jewish women and their families facing breast cancer or ovarian cancer or high risk through a genetic mutation. So one of the questions we get a lot of interesting questions at Sharsheret, and aside from the how do you pronounce Sharsheret, the most common one is, why do you need a Jewish organization for this? After all, there are a lot of amazing cancer organizations. There's Komen, there's American Cancer Society, there are. But there are two very specific reasons why Sharsheret was born and why we continue to need a Jewish organization for this. So first, and we'll talk about this, is the genetic issue. We're at much higher risk for some genetic mutations that raise our risk significantly. And the second is specific cultural or halachic issues, things like liturgy during the high holidays, Unatana Tokav, can you imagine being diagnosed and having to sit through service where we talk about who will live and who will die? Things like that. Or our community has a taboo against tattooing. That's not to say that there aren't Jews with tattoos. There are plenty. But we do have a taboo, whether it's halachic or whether it's cultural, and your predecessors were tattooed against their will in Europe. A lot of Jews don't get tattoos, and you need tattoos for radiation therapy, which is very often a part of treatment. So we have some cultural issues, some religious issues, and some genetic issues. Sharsheret helps all women, no matter their connection to the Jewish community, unaffiliated through ultra-Orthodox, and even those who aren't Jewish. And we help women and their families at all stages, whether they know they carry a mutation but have yet to be diagnosed, whether they're in the diagnostic process, getting treatment, have advanced cancer, or they're long-term survivors. And we do that through 12 national programs. When we first started, we were one volunteer-run and one program, peer support, only in the Northeast. 17 years later, we have 12 national programs, 3 administrative offices, hopefully a 4th one in the Midwest shortly. And we have 23 staff members, and we're represented in every single state. Some of the programs are Busy Box, if you're facing cancer while you're raising young children. Embrace, for those who are facing metastatic disease. We have an ovarian cancer program, a genetics program, and a wonderful, wonderful survivorship program. And if you have interest in any of these particular programs, I'm happy to talk about them during Q&A. We also do a lot of educational programs. Programs like this, programs like Pink Shabbats in synagogues, at programs on campuses and more, all to raise awareness about our heightened risk. At Sharsheret, we believe in stories. Everybody has a Sharsheret story. Maybe you already know someone who was helped by Sharsheret. Maybe even you were. Or maybe this event is the start of your Sharsheret story, and you will continue to be involved with this important issue, helping raise awareness. I want to share with you my Sharsheret story. I was diagnosed with breast cancer just over 3 years ago. My diagnosis actually came from treatment for a different cancer 17 years earlier than that. But because I had had radiation to my chest, I knew that I was at higher risk. And together with my doctor, we decided that I would start mammograms early, and we decided that after a couple of years, we would alternate mammograms with a higher tech MRI. Every 6 months I would get something. I had a clean mammogram, and the doctor said, you know what, let's just get a baseline MRI. I know your mammogram was clean, but let's just get it, it's on our mind now. So 6 weeks later I had an MRI, and that caught my cancer. But it caught my cancer very early. When I was sick, I had to sit down from work, and I also relied on Sharsheret during my treatment. And then when I was ready to go back to work, they had a new position open, and it seemed beshert. And I have to tell you, some people said, well, won't that be overwhelming? But I will tell you that most days it isn't. Most days it's incredibly empowering to be working to spread awareness and offer support. The reason I shared my story, the point is that I needed to know, I knew what needed to be done for me, how to monitor myself for my needs. And my breast cancer diagnosis is pretty rare when you compare it to others. I mean, most people don't get breast cancer because they had treatment for a different cancer. So everybody's story is different, but I knew what needed to be done for me, and that's incredibly important. One of the things I say is there isn't a person in this room who would let a child's lingering cough go without a visit to the pediatrician. Not one person. Yet every day we put ourselves last, right? We have work obligations and volunteer commitments and family things that must be done, and they're all incredibly important, but not more important than you. And you owe it to yourselves to treat yourself like you would treat any one of your loved ones. And I know that's hard. I understand that we always put ourselves at the bottom of the list. So if it makes it easier, think about the modeling you're doing for your children. If you care for yourself, your children will know it's important to care for themselves. Somehow that makes it more acceptable to us, which is a whole other lecture at a different time. But that's what I really want you to get out of this. We're going to talk about some of these health concerns and tips and screening. But if you get nothing else out of tonight, remember that you have an obligation to care for yourselves the way you would care for any of your loved ones. So let's talk about being proactive and mitigating risk. Sharsheret offers no medical advice because we're all different, and that's why I'm asking you to know yourself and your family history. There are ways to be proactive. So in the general population, America, 1 out of every 500 men and women carry a mutation on one of their BRCA genes. 1 in 500. In our community of European descent, Ashkenazi descent, that number is 1 in 40. So that's a pretty staggering number. And if you do carry a mutation, it's certainly not a guarantee of diagnosis, but it ups your risk, and there are things you need to do to be on top of it. You have a lifetime risk of being diagnosed with breast cancer of up to 88%, and ovarian cancer of up to 45% over the course of your life if you carry one of these mutations. So you need to know your family's cancer history. Have the talk with them. Do it now, while people remember, while your family is gathered. It's incredibly important. And don't just ask about breast cancer or ovarian cancer. Ask about all cancers. The field of genetics is growing constantly. So what might seem totally irrelevant today, 5 years from now could be incredibly important. When these mutations were discovered, we thought that they were only relevant to breast cancer. That's why it's called BR, breast, CA cancer. Shortly after, we learned that ovarian cancer is also tied to this. And even since I started working at Sharsheret just a few years ago, we now know that prostate, melanoma, and pancreatic cancer are also related to this. So ask about all cancers. You can actually go to the Sharsheret website, just search family tree, and there's a form you can print out to make notes. You'll ask your family, you'll put it away, hopefully you'll never need to use it, but it's critical information to have. And we should never turn away knowledge. Listen, I told you Sharsheret doesn't make medical suggestions, and that's true. But the one thing we do say is don't turn away knowledge. It doesn't, once you've had these screenings, if it turns out you do have a mutation, there's nothing you have to do. There are still choices to be made. You don't have to have prophylactic surgery. Sometimes people will call and say, I know I should get the screening, but I would never remove a healthy body part, so I'm not going to get it. And we have to remind people, wait a second, that is not the only thing you can do in response to a genetic mutation. You can change the way you screen. You can change the frequency of your screenings. You can change the age at which you begin screenings. So if surgery isn't for you, or isn't for someone who's had a diagnosis of a genetic mutation, there are other options. The other thing you need to do is know your own body. So I feel like this is a little bit of a bait and switch. We talk about BRCA mutations so much because they are so prevalent in our community, but the reality is only 10 to 15% of diagnoses are hereditary, which still means 85 to 90% are random, are lifestyle, pure bad luck, whatever it is, environment. So not having a genetic mutation doesn't get you off the hook for caring for yourself. So you need to know what's normal for your body. You need to be aware. Obviously, we are all familiar with the obvious changes, but there were also subtle concerns. I just want to go over very quickly what some of the things to look out for are. Obviously, we all know that having a lump may warrant a visit to the doctor's office. But what some people don't know is that the breast tissue is actually far wider. It could be under your arm, it could be down here or on the side. That's one thing. Or a change in the skin, redness or a rash, dimpling, a thickening of the skin, or even unexplained change in size on one side. And although I'm not really one who believes in women's intuition, I can tell you that I've heard enough women say, I don't know, I didn't see anything, I just felt that something wasn't right. So if something doesn't seem right, it probably warrants a trip to the doctor. Now, of all these things that I've talked about, it's not a reason to panic. It really isn't. Most times, all of these things turn out to be nothing. But while you first notice something, it does warrant a trip to the doctor just to rule everything out so you can move on comfortably and not worry about it. Because one of the things I'm going to talk about later is the impact of stress. So let's find this way to remove stress. Okay, so we talked about knowing family history. We talked about being familiar with your own body. Let's talk about healthy living for a second. We need to be proactive about all of our health, not just breast health. All the things that doctors tell you to do actually do mitigate your risk. Eat well. I'm not saying you never can have dessert. Just have it a couple times a week or have a bite or two. Don't, wolf down an entire cheesecake, that kind of thing. Make sure your plate is filled with whole grains and lots of different colors. Be active. I'm not asking you to run a marathon unless you already wanted to run a marathon, but I'm asking you to take a walk after dinner a few nights a week. And then maybe the hardest thing of all is to be present in your life, to reduce stress as much as possible. I know it's not easy, which is why I'm saying don't go straight to marathon and a sugar-free, fat-free diet. Do it in small, manageable steps, because every little bit that you improve your health lowers your risk more than you would imagine. And by the way, well, you know what, the other thing I want to say is commit to the appropriate screenings and don't push them off. So in theory, you'll have very shortly a plan you've created with your doctor about when you need to start mammography, what other kinds of tests you need, things like that. So when the time comes, make a commitment to yourself to actually do it. It is so easy to push it off, but don't. You know, government recommendations are not one size fits all, and they keep changing. First it's 40 you start mammograms, then it's 50, now I heard it's back down to 45. The reality is those recommendations really aren't relevant to us. When somebody calls in a panic, like when they say it's 45 and I'm already 50 and I haven't had one, we always say, you didn't read the fine print. The fine print is for women of average risk. And anyone who comes from an Ashkenazi background is not of average risk. That's why you need to create your own screening plan with your doctor. Okay, all these things that we've talked about, they'll help, all of them will help lower your risk. Not just of breast cancer and ovarian cancer and other cancers, but of diabetes and heart disease and dementia. It's a win-win. But it can't prevent all diagnoses. Should the worst occur, doing all the things we talked about will help you be diagnosed sooner when treatment may be less invasive, when it increases chances of a cure, all sorts of positive things. And by the way, being healthy gives you the strength to heal. Okay, let's talk for a second about your Sharsheret story. So the first thing you can do is you have these challahs with the pink strips through them. Take them home. While I've been talking, they've been doing their second rising. They're ready to bake when you get home. 350, depending on the size of it and how hot your oven runs. 20 minutes, maybe 25, but look at it first at 20 minutes. You're gonna have these gorgeous pink challahs. Invite somebody to have a meal with you this Shabbat, this weekend. And when they say, why in the world is your challah pink? You can start spreading awareness yourself. That's the first thing you can do. You can attend additional programs and help raise awareness. Somebody already spoke to me tonight about their synagogue doing a program. You can race with Team Sharsheret. Should you be one of the people in the room who actually does want to run a marathon? You can go to our website. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Maybe the most important thing is to remember that Sharsheret can help and share that information with someone in need. All of Sharsheret's programs are designed to be accessible from anywhere in the country. Nobody comes to our offices for support. The programs that we have are through the mail and through telephone and through email and all sorts of things like that. And every single program we offer is 100% customizable based on an individual person's needs, 100% confidential, and 100% free. Very low barrier with intent because we just want to support as many people as possible. When the program is done tonight, there's a whole bunch of resources here that I want you to feel free to take. Some information about Jewish genes, some information about what's Jewish about breast cancer. If you know someone who would benefit, there's a brochure on facing breast cancer as a Jewish woman, about thriving again after a diagnosis. There's also a recipe for pink challah, a recipe card, some giveaways, things like that. Oh, and then the one other thing is, everybody here who signed in, and a reminder to see me if you haven't, I have all the information I need. But should you want some more information, should you want to connect about our peer support program, our genetics program, our survivorship program, should you want to coordinate an event in your community or race with Team Sharsheret or share resources with your healthcare provider, take a moment to fill one of these out and then we'll be in touch with you to move on. I want to take a second to see if there are any questions about Sharsheret, about breast or ovarian cancer, about genetics, about my own personal story, anything. Yeah.
If somebody tells you that they have cancer, they're battling it, what's an appropriate response?
Say again? The question was, if somebody tells you they have cancer, what's an appropriate response? So this is getting to the part of the program where I said if we had time or there was interest, I'll give you a little bit of information about how best to help. So the first thing I would tell you is say something. I have a dear friend who was diagnosed this year, and she confided in me that while many people had asked her how she was or said they were sorry, two of her closest friends had said nothing. So I said, so, it must be they don't know. No, she assured me they had asked her husband how she was, but they hadn't asked her. And she said, I know I should not be wasting my energy on this, but it hurts me so much that they didn't even acknowledge that something so major had changed in my life. So, cancer brings up so many difficult emotions in all of us. And you might not know what to say, but the reality is you have to say something. It's perfectly acceptable to say, I'm so sorry, and leave it at that. Or to say, I really don't know what to say. That's acceptable too, but acknowledge it. Of course, on the flip side of that is don't say something. I can tell you how many people, say the most inappropriate things, well-meaning. Say, oh, my so-and-so had the same thing, and then they stop awkwardly when they realize that they don't want to share the end of that story. Or I can't tell you how many people I had to comfort after I told them about my diagnosis, people I wasn't particularly close to, right? Like a boss who started crying hysterically. Not somebody who would invite me to their child's bar mitzvah, but they needed to cry. So try and maintain, an equilibrium. It's not the person who's been diagnosed's obligation to comfort you. And then finally, I would say, when you invariably you'll want to help in some way. The one thing I would say is don't put the onus on the person facing cancer. In other words, don't say, what can I do to help? It's hard for all of us to accept help. And they may be so overwhelmed that they don't even know what they need. So instead of what can I do to help, how about, I'd love to bring over a meal. Is Thursday at 6 okay? Or I'm taking my children bowling Sunday morning. Can I pick yours up? Or I'm headed over to Target. Do you need toilet paper, milk, a magazine to read? That kind of thing. So those are 3 quick tips. We can do a whole separate thing on building a caring community, but those I think are the 3 main things I would. Does that answer your question? Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah?
I don't know if you're able to talk about this or not, but can you tell us a little bit about Sharsheret, who started the organization? Because
Sure.
she doesn't get enough press, and she's up in Olam Haba saying, shh, talk about me.
So the question was, can I talk a little bit about our founder, Sharsheret? So I will give you the on one foot biography. Rochelle was 28 years old with 2 small children when she was diagnosed. To give you a sense of the caliber of intellect and success and determination she had, while she had 2 small children, she clerked for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's a very impressive person. When she was diagnosed, everybody kept saying to her, I know just the person you should talk to, but it was always a woman in her 60s or 70s. And she said to herself, I cannot be the only woman facing breast cancer who's more worried about how their children are getting to nursery the next morning than, I don't know, something else. And she did her research. There was nothing out there like this. And she bought herself a rolling briefcase and schlepped it to every treatment with her. By the time her treatments were complete, she had a 501c3, a nonprofit organization, specifically to support young Jewish women. That was 17 years ago. Our definition of young has changed. We are one of the only organizations that will help. We help sometimes, unfortunately, even teenagers, but we help anybody living an active lifestyle. So we also help women in their 70s who are active and things like that. And she ran Sharsheret on and off until a year and a half ago, when unfortunately she was diagnosed with metastatic disease and passed. But being the kind of person she was, she knew what was happening and planned for it, and we're actually living out her plans. Sharsheret is following the long-term plans that she set out for it, and everything we do is in her merit and her memory. Any other questions? Yes?
Insurance. Does insurance generally cover, like, if you want to sneak it up with Braiding or not?
Okay, so listen, insurance may be changing soon, but I'll tell you what I know as of today. Most insurances will cover a BRCA screening. There are two types of screenings. There's the initial BRCA screening, which tests for 3 specific mutations on 2 specific genes, BRCA1 and 2. And the purposes of those genes, or the purpose of those 2 genes, is to repress rogue cell growth, which is what cancer is. So if you have a mutation on those genes, then it's not repressing rogue cell growth. I have never met a doctor who hasn't been able to get that test covered by insurance. You're of Ashkenazi descent, you have a relative or 2 who've been diagnosed, things like that. If that comes back negative and you have a very strong family history, there's a full panel. Because there are other mutations, CHEK2, PALB2, others, that's sometimes harder to get covered. I spoke to a woman from Myriad, which is the company that does most of the genetic testing in this country, not all, and she said their standard rule of thumb is that if someone has 1 primary relative, a sister or mother, or 2 secondary relatives, an aunt, a grandmother, then it's almost always covered. I've still heard occasional cases where it hasn't been. 2 thoughts there. One is, fight it. Fight it. Insurance companies often assume you're going to give up, but if you have a real reason for wanting that screening, you fight it with your doctor. The second thing is there are other companies now that offer screenings at a reduced rate. Just the BRCA ones, excuse me, but they'll do it for a couple of $100s, which puts it in the range of accessible to most people. But what you should do before you get a BRCA screening, so the law says you cannot be denied health insurance if you carry a mutation. The law hasn't caught up on long-term care insurance or life insurance. So if you suspect there may be a mutation and you don't have life insurance or you don't have long-term care insurance and it's something you want, then that's something you should consider prior to the screening. Yes?
At what age should a doctor start? You mentioned teenagers. At what age should they start self-examination?
So you should, at what age should a person start self-examination? So it's interesting. You know those cards you find like in mikvahot or in, I don't know, in doctor's offices that show how to do a self-exam? So those have fallen out of favor because the studies have shown that self-exam doesn't extend life. So even though we all know someone who's found their own cancer, the study says it doesn't have a long-term impact on life expectancy. True or, I mean, it's obviously true if they've done studies, but here's what I'll tell you. Every single doctor tells you you have to know your own body, and self-examination is one of those ways you know your own body. I think that it depends on the person. I think if there's a very strong history, you'd encourage someone to start earlier. Obviously not before menstruation started, but I would suggest probably around the time that you feel it's appropriate to go to a gynecologist, have that conversation. That would likely be the time you would start self-examination if the doctor felt it was warranted. I wanted to say one other thing based on that. Oh, But in terms of screening, not, the other end of it, again, everybody has an individual plan, but the standard thought is if you have a parent, a grandparent, an aunt that was diagnosed, you might start screening 10 years prior to the age of their diagnosis. So if your mother was diagnosed at 50, you would start at 40. If your mother was diagnosed at 25, you might start at the end of your teens. So that's something to consider also. Any other questions? Okay, so a couple more things just to wrap up. One is that I find that sometimes people would rather ask their questions privately. I'm going to hang around for a while if anybody wants to speak to me on a one-to-one basis. And don't forget to take things. If you don't take them, I have to fly back with them. So that's very important. And there's really good information there. I know that sometimes it feels uncomfortable to take it. It's educate yourself. If you don't want it around, pass it on to someone else, recycle it, whatever you want to do, but learn what's in there. And then finally, I'm going to ask something very difficult. I would love to get a picture of everybody holding their trays, which I know is not the easiest thing, but what if we all gathered over here and tried that? Thank you very much.